A lot is surfacing in the collective right now that is amplifying polarization, fracturing, and fragmentation. And what I want to bring forward in this video is the lofty concept of truth, discernment, and the need to move beyond binary black and white narratives and embrace nuance once again, to allow for conversation to happen. This is what is needed in the collective right now, is to open up these Pandora's boxes and have these tricky, difficult, nuanced conversations, because what I'm seeing right now is the lack of acknowledgement that there are infinite shades of gray between the spectrum of black and white, and in fact we live in a multicolor, technicolor reality. And so what we have to do is really anchor in to these ideas and allow ourselves to come into the heart, out of the head, into the heart, and open up our field to have these more nuanced conversations. And what I'm endeavoring to do in this video is to really anchor in the idea of higher truth so we can move beyond these narratives. Because what is happening right now is this polarization is leading to division and dysregulated nervous systems. So people are in a state of reactivity rather than having the capacity to respond with true compassion. So we're going to get into some pretty deep subjects here. We're going to do a deep dive, but this is how we roll here on my channel. My name is Amanda. For those of you who are new, welcome or welcome back. And yeah, we've been having some really interesting conversations lately, and we have so many more to come. And right now, with all that is occurring, I feel it is so incredibly important to really anchor into truth and have this conversation about discernment, because so many are feeling fatigue and overwhelm, and this is just beyond important at this point in time to be regulated in ourselves, to be anchored in ourselves, to be anchored in our unique hearts of truth right now, but anchored into higher truth at the same time. So this is really a deep spiritual initiation, is how I'm feeling this collective turmoil right now. It gets worse before it gets better, right? And this is really catalyzing us into a higher level of maturity, spiritual maturity, emotional maturity, and mature discernment. And spiritual maturity and emotional maturity go hand in hand. And spiritual development and emotional development go hand in hand. But what we've seen is also kind of a separation of the two. Spiritual development is sometimes prioritized over emotional development. And so this is really about reintegrating the two, because incumbent upon spiritual development is really dependent upon, is really the better way to say that, emotional development. And a lot of people are out there getting their galactivations and having these initiations through medicines and whatnot without doing that deeper shadow work that is really emotional development unto itself. So even within the spiritual community, I am seeing and witnessing a lot of people getting caught up in these narratives that are very clearly driven by deeper agendas, and they're not seeing that. And some of them have large influence and followings, and so they're not seeing beyond the veil the way that they portray themselves to be able to. And so it's really important to be able to have these conversations and to remember that this isn't about judging or blaming or shaming or picking sides, for that matter, when it comes to these very polarized issues. It's about reclaiming our capacity to perceive truth beyond the noise, beyond the division. So again, discernment is the initiation of our time, and it is truly the key right now. So I do have a lot of notes because there's a lot of points that I want to hit in this conversation. So just, bear with me if I am looking down at points in time. But, where we're at right now is that narrative is prioritized over truth. And we have media, social platforms, and even spiritual circles becoming echo chambers. We have silos of truth, and the algorithm feeds us more of what we engage with and what we agree with. The AI algorithm picks up on that and it serves us more, so we see more of that. And it happens on both sides of the spectrum, and it creates this increasing polarization. Even the comment sections are kind of catered and tailored. They'll bump up certain comments for some people and those that you would agree with, and drop down the algorithm those that you would not agree with, even though they're all in that same reel or video or post or whatever it is. I've seen that. And so it's creating more polarized perspectives and more demonization of the opposition of the other side, the perceived opposition. But we have to remember that all of this is rooted in separation consciousness, which is one and the same as war consciousness. So there's a lot of talk of World War III right now in our physical reality. Well, we've actually been in the midst of World War III for some time now, and it is a war on consciousness, a war on spirituality, as within, so without. As the collective becomes increasingly polarized and divided, we're seeing this manifest in riots and protests and social division and projection. And then, of course, the global issues of potential nuclear threat. So we're at a head right now. And I do believe there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So I don't want to inject fear into the conversation, but rather the opposite is to really encourage us to come into our heart space, which will help us anchor into truth, which will help us anchor more deeply into peace. Because truth isn't loud. Truth is soft. Truth brings us deeper within. And this is how we get to discern what is truth, is by going deeper within our body. So everybody claims to be speaking truth, but really the vast majority is rooted in opinion and through trauma filters and lenses. So we have to be able to distinguish between truth, opinion, and programming. So truth is what really will resonate in the body and the soul. You'll feel it. And if you're disconnected with your body, as so many people are with their dysregulated nervous systems, it's going to be really challenging to be able to have that capacity, not just the awareness, but the actual capacity to really feel into it. So truth is timeless, and often there is a layer of paradox involved in the truth. It embraces nuance because we are here having a 3D human experience. And so in this reality, there is room for spectrums of truth and nuance. However, there is a higher truth guiding our evolution, the way I perceive it, the way I believe it. I do believe that there is a higher truth with a capital T that resides within our heart of truth, which is why I named my actual podcast Heart of Truth. That is guiding us home. That is guiding us home to the heart of truth. I do believe that exists, that higher truth exists. And we are in the process, all of us collectively and individually, on our own paths and journeys, but collectively also coming home to that heart of truth, that we are all one. Unity consciousness is what we are all moving toward, evolving toward. And as we do so, all of the shadows that keep us in separation, that keep us in this war consciousness, are coming to the surface. So we have to remember that opinion itself is rooted in personal ego bias, and that often carries an emotional charge. So one way to be able to discern truth versus opinion is how emotionally reactive and charged the argument might be. And then programming itself is implanted belief systems. So this gets into mind control and the programming of the masses through the manipulated media, through propaganda, through these agendas that have existed not just for decades, but for centuries, for millennia. Humanity has been controlled and enslaved through the mind. It is mind control, mind enslavement, mental enslavement more than anything else. And this is based on social control, religion, trauma, unhealed wounds get siphoned and hijacked in order to control people, to keep them in fear, which makes them more easily manipulated. So when your energy field is constricted and you're in survival, you're in fear, you're going to be more easily manipulated. And the ones who are controlling the show, the puppet masters, they know this. And so they keep perpetuating wars, false wars, to keep people in division, to keep people in fear. So we have to remember, people over prophets, people over the politicians and the pundits. We have to remember that on the other side are humans. I see 11:11. And this is the threshold. This is the portal that we are being called through. I very much believe through the solstice portal, but also whenever you're watching this, right? This is a timeless truth that we're all integrating in this now moment. And this now moment is really a spectrum of moments because it is just evolving as we evolve, because there's just so much happening and coming up in the collective right now. So this is really what we have to anchor into, is to remember that we are not the enemy. There are forces that we could say is just a manifestation of our collective consciousness, our collective trauma and wounds, if you want to look at it that way, that the devil and Satan is really just a manifestation of our shadow. We can absolutely say that. But there are forces and energies that are operating as this frequency of Satan in the background that is creating, sowing further division and chaos in the collective. So, as we move through these, people are getting hijacked into these agendas, these social justice issues in the name of morality and compassion. And so they have weaponized compassion, they have weaponized truth, they have weaponized morality to siphon, to hook people in to these agendas. And so many of the people that are the quote-unquote victims in question are pawns, and it's incredibly sad. And people are seeing through very filtered lenses because of media bias, and they're not actually encompassing in their understanding the other side of the argument. And in many cases, there are valid points on both sides of the argument. And so this is where we get into the energy and the need for nuance, to be able to have compassion for the person who sees things differently from you, because they might actually have a valid point that you hadn't perceived before. But how are we ever going to come to a common understanding and to be able to make genuine progress if we don't allow the other side to genuinely voice their truth, if we keep projecting onto them that they are brainwashed, that they are the problem, that they are on the side of evil? And yes, it's a nuanced conversation unto itself to be talking about this, but the truth is that most people call truth is really just trauma with a microphone. They're projecting from their own wounding, from their own programming, and not all of it is anchored in God. What we have to do, and I mean God in the most comprehensive mother, father, God sense, beyond religion, God beyond religion. But there is this higher guiding intelligence, this source intelligence that moves through us all, this creative intelligence. And if it is not rooted in that higher truth, I just got chills in my legs, then it's really just ego distortion with a microphone. So the pressure to choose a side is also part of the manipulation. That is separation consciousness, war consciousness in action. So we have this false compassion that is getting in the way of us actually entering into unity consciousness. Because if your compassion is selective, that is not true compassion. That is just performative social justice. That is moral relativity in action. So sovereignty is not about bypassing reality, but honoring that there is nuance to truth, that the other person might actually have a point, and that the truth may lie somewhere in the middle, that both sides might actually be right, but there's also different angles of the issue in which this side is right about that and that side is right about that. So can we come to a common understanding? Can we come to a commonality in our perception of how to move forward? Because the only way to move forward is to be able to actually have conversation. And in America, in the United States of America, I should say, our political system has been hijacked and weaponized against the population. It's both wings of the same bird. They pretend, but they never make any actual progress. They pretend to be on one side or the other, and then they lose people in, and it's really just mirroring this divide and conquer agenda. So it's this good versus evil binary that gets perpetuated, and we all have our own perceptions and opinions, and I do believe that there is higher truth guiding certain agendas, and then a kind of lower truth guiding other agendas. But truly, we have to remember the world is complex. Humanity is complex right now, but truth is soft and simple, and it is rooted in love and peace and harmony. So we have to, again, move beyond the binary black and white of these human issues and remember that there is a commonality that exists within all of us, between all of us. So again, that war that we're experiencing, that we're witnessing, all of it is engineered. This entire divide and conquer agenda is engineered to keep us focused on the distractions and not the true problem, not the true root of proverbial evil that is running the show behind the scenes. So what is really happening in the background behind the scenes when these distractions play out in the media is really the question that has to be asked. And then we have this performative outrage keeping us loosed, keeping us in separation, keeping us distracted in social media comment wars, right? So, outrage itself is addictive and it gets people sucked into the social media siphons because it gives us a sense of certainty. We do need that. We do need beliefs to keep us grounded in how we navigate our reality, but we also need to have the capacity to allow our beliefs to shift and change as we navigate the journey called life, as we navigate this complex world. I have changed my beliefs numerous times about many things. So we have to remember that belief is rooted in ego and perception, and it is not necessarily rooted in truth. Beliefs serve us to a certain point. But what this performative outrage also does is it kind of engenders this sense of moral superiority that a lot of people get a huge dopamine hit from, honestly. But it's actually bypassing true discernment and true compassion and morality. So social media, the algorithm obviously rewards the polarity. So it's going to promote the separation, the division, the narratives that are talking about the agendas and the separation and control and whatever is polarizing. Those issues are going to be pushed to the top of the algorithm. Anger and fear definitely gets more engagement than genuine grounded reflection. The tide is kind of shifting, but I'm also seeing that a lot of people are resonating less with social media in general. And the truth is, the truth is that absolutism itself is an illusion. Until we return to oneness of source, of the truth of love, everything is nuanced, right? And again, truth is quiet, it's soft. It's where those opposites meet and merge into integrated wholeness. So it's that aspect of union of the polarities. That's the masculine and the feminine, inner union, sacred union, divine union in action, is this merging of the polarities. So we've been conditioned to seek absolutist answers, right versus wrong, good versus evil, us versus them, projecting onto the other side, and lately we have this playing out, like tribal warfare is seen even in the realm of sports and such. We definitely see this in politics. And humans have this programming to pick a side, to choose a side. But we are transcending that survival mentality. But to do that, we have to alchemize all the aspects of self that actually operate in this us versus them mentality. And so we're seeing all of this bubbling up to the surface, all of the shadows of the collective and our own personal shadows coming up to the surface, so that we can transmute and move beyond the binary, because the binary is the illusion itself. So true wisdom exists in that liminal space between the black and white. It's in the paradox and the nuance. It's that infinitely faceted diamond of the heart that reflects the rainbow of the spectrum, that only is formed from the compression of the coal becoming the diamond. So it's that integration of the darkness to become the full spectrum light rather than the hollow light. So often, again, arguments are right in certain regards and, partially wrong in other regards. So this is not also to get really deep into this. This is not about moral relativism. This is about energetic complexity in our world, because these arguments about right and wrong and truth and all of that, they are more complex than most of us want to admit. We want to be able to just pick a side and believe a meme and, share that and say, this is the truth. And it's usually far more complex than that. So, this is getting into that discernment piece. Energetic complexity is rooted in discernment as well. So relativism will abandon discernment altogether. So this, I think I'm going to do a whole other separate video on, actually, about moral relativism. I have trouble with that word. See, it's not even rooted in truth, because I can't even speak it clearly. Moral relativism versus discernment. There's a huge difference there. So moral relativism, just in brief though, will say that there is no truth, only perspective. So it's my truth, your truth, his truth, her truth. And that's where we have to remember that at a certain level, we have to acknowledge that there are multiple truths of our reality and perspective, but that there's also simultaneously a higher truth that is guiding us to a deeper truth that transcends this duality, binary perspective, polarity, that is not rooted in holistic, embodied integrity and wisdom. So there is like this flattening of discernment, and it's like subjective truth, right? This idea of subjectivity is what some people will argue, but that can honestly be used to justify anything. And so then it's a tiptoe into enabling harm, actual harm. So I've gotten some comments on a video. It's like, well, aren't you just projecting? And I'm like, well, no, because and some people will know which video I'm talking about. I'm not projecting. I am reading the field and also have received actual confirmation. And there, you just know at a certain point when you have this ability to read energy because you're rooted in your heart, you're rooted in your body, and your nervous system is regulated, where you're not projecting, you're actually perceiving this deeper truth about the energy underlying the narrative that this other person is projecting into the world that is totally rooted in distortion. And so, you get to be able to be anchored and rooted in that higher truth yourself when you can embrace this path and do that work to anchor into your heart. This is, again, really about anchoring into your heart. So discernment, again, is neutral, it's compassionate, it is clear. There is a deep compassion in being able to say that person is operating out of integrity, and that is not judgment, that is discernment, okay? So this is coming from a heart knowing, not a reactive mind. There's a huge difference there. So again, this, everyone has their truth. That's moral relativism. And yes, multiple perspectives do exist, but that doesn't mean they're all equally pure or aligned with higher truth, with the greater good of humanity even. So again, nuance different from bypass. There's a huge difference here. So real discernment can say that both parties are right and both parties are wrong, and that there is a truth in the middle that can possibly bridge both perspectives, because both of them are also at the same time missing the mark by not factoring in the other nuances of the conversation. So again, energetic complexity here. So we're being invited into a higher octave of perception of our reality right now, so that we can hold polarity without collapsing into chaos, into control of the narrative as well, where we can open the field to allow somebody else to have a differing opinion and to be curious about that, rather than projecting and saying, oh, you're brainwashed and siding with the devil, right? So one of the issues at hand, and I don't want to get deep into it, is this migrant issue. So both sides are right and both sides are wrong on certain aspects of the issue, right? So, many are advocating for compassion and morality, but they're not really holding the ones accountable who have committed crimes. And so we're not acknowledging on that side of the argument the actual violent crimes that have been committed by many. So it's like, where is the compassion for the Lake and Rileys? Where is the compassion for those succumbing to drugs and addiction because of the trafficking at the border? Where is the compassion for the child trafficking at the border, right? So that's a huge nuance that is missed by many preaching compassion and morality, because it's like, actually the other side does have compassion, but for other aspects of the issue that is not being acknowledged by that side. So the others advocate for borders and for borders and safety, but sometimes there is a lack of heart and compassion for those who have been here for a long time, who are upstanding members of their community, who have really integrated and are here just genuinely trying to make a better life for them and their families. Absolutely not should they just be torn out of that reality and displaced, because that is the truth of what's happening to them. So again, both sides are right, both sides are wrong if they're not acknowledging those aspects of the issue here. So it's not black and white. There is more complexity. Can we create better policies for naturalization moving forward? Can we create, better border policies from the get-go? Can we create a more seamless immigration process? And can we just have better checks and balances and background checks and such like that? An open border doesn't serve, because our resources are also, in question here. Many Americans are suffering due to homelessness. There are many homeless veterans. My personal feeling is like, if there are veterans who are homeless, they should get the resources over the ones who come here illegally. And so this is creating a whole wave of, backlash on the side of the people who want straight closed borders, right? It's like, can we take care of our own? Because bleeding hearts eventually bleed out. And so this is a valid argument if you're going to take a step back and not be so emotionally siphoned. These are all valid arguments that all need to be brought together, and we can find a way forward together if we allow for conversation and discussion. So neither side is speaking from a holistic perspective. So we need holistic thinking and energetic clarity about what's really underlying these issues right now. So we also have this No King's Day movement. I already did a video on that, but this is much more than political or social. This is a collective ritual to have, it's like a subconscious ritual to have men rejecting your inner Grail king, maybe queen too, rejecting the inner Grail king as women then do not trust masculine leadership. And energetically speaking, we all hold both. And from a relational, interpersonal dynamic perspective, this can create further division into the gender wars. Another video that has been requested that I'm going to get deeper into. But, why? Just think about why for a moment. Why would anybody want to dissolve and reject and demonize the archetype of the noble leader, of the heart-led sacred masculine kingship that is rooted in devotion and service to the greater good of humanity is what the king archetype actually represents in its purest, highest form. So who benefits from the desecration and denigration of that archetype as a whole? Who benefits? So this is really about the distortion of the father archetype as well, and that creates confusion in the divine masculine expression, because subconsciously, subtly, they might continue to reject that aspect of themselves that is trying to rise, because what we actually really need is true divine masculines embodied in their heart-led service, embodied in their power, stepping forward, because we need that. We need more of that sacred masculinity in the world, that true sacred masculine leadership coming to the fore, to take the place of the parasitic psychopaths that are controlling the reality currently. So we need to honor and recognize that there is a deeper agenda at play with that. And so whenever I see people, especially those in the spiritual community, especially priestesses, participating in these mass rituals, I'm like, hi, where is your discernment? Where is your capacity to see beyond the veil? Because that's what priestesses are really here to do, is see beyond the veil and anchor in the higher truth of divine love. And by participating in those mass rituals, what it's really signaling is, they're still operating in distortion, in my opinion. So the collective is experiencing a mass disillusionment right now in the leadership in general, in the spiritual communities, in the greater collective. Obviously, leadership is breaking down. It has been broken for a long time, but it is coming to a head very palpably, very much so. This is the age of Aquarius, Saturn moving into Aries as well. We're seeing this all coming up to the surface, and it was always meant to happen, but how is it actually going to play out as far as the exact level and degree of chaos that we actually reach? Can we temper the storm before it becomes a full-on war? So this is a really important conversation to have right now. The current waves are part of this collective disillusionment, the migrant issues, the political issues, the social chaos, the societal implosions, the spiritual community itself also mired in this, projection and division and stuff. So we're being forced to let go of savior figures, of gurus, of hierarchical structures and leaders, as well as the false binaries and, these very packaged narratives that are propagated by the media and by social media. So the disillusionment that is occurring right now, there is a sacred aspect to it, because it's the breakdown before the breakthrough, collectively speaking. This is part of an initiatory process that we all have to go through, that dark night of the soul, in order to emerge on the other side whole. This is how it happens. That inner alchemy comes in the darkness, when we're in that void space, when all of our ego walls are broken down and all that's left is for the heart to emerge into its truth. So this is the necessary breakdown for that deeper truth to emerge, to arise from within. So this is about reclaiming the sacred diamond of truth that resides within all of us, that resides within our hearts. So again, truth is a frequency. It's a vibration. It is not a belief. It is not a narrative. We feel it in our bodies. We feel it in our hearts and souls. It is not loud. It doesn't shout. And we also don't really need to defend truth. Truth defends itself. The truth shall always prevail, right? So it's like a clear bell that rings in the center of your being. When you're really anchored into it, you can feel it. You will know if it's true or if it's not. If you're still in your head, you're going to enter into confusion, into doubt, into questioning. But if you can drop into your heart knows. Your heart knows the way. It's that idea of the little prince seeing with the eyes of the heart keeps coming through. I just can't remember the exact quotation from the book, but it is about the eyes of the heart see most clearly. That's the essence of what it says anyway. So when we embody truth, we really don't need to defend it, even though it can be really frustrating at times when we know that others who are still operating in distortion are misperceiving us, are mishearing us, are judging us, are projecting onto us from their lens of distortion, from their lens of belief. But this is where we get to really go through that sacred process of releasing attachment for how we're perceived by others, and to just allow it. Sometimes that sort of truth gets to come out and you get to stand up for yourself and defend yourself, but you don't have to. And it's a matter of finding that balance in many cases, because there are going to be people who will just project constantly, and you get to also say, no, don't have the time or the energy for that. You might have to block them or stonewall them to a degree, but you don't need to continually defend yourself when you're embodied in your truth. And that's a hard one in many cases, when you have been demonized by your loved ones for walking a path that is different. And this is where we get to step into our leadership. This is the initiation into leadership, is to not allow those opinions of others to get us to veer off of our path, that we know what is right for us and what is true for us, because we're rooted in that higher truth, that deeper knowing that we are here to anchor in love, peace, harmony, that we are here to be of service. And that's going to look different from just being another cog in the wheel of these broken, outdated systems and structures that are breaking down. They need to be dismantled. They are being dismantled. They are collapsing in real time. It's an internal process of the collapsing of the old false structures, as well as an external collapsing occurring in our reality now. And the leaders of the new era are here to help rebuild, to build new systems, new structures rooted in divinity, rooted in higher truth, rooted in love. And so part of this initiation is rooting into your heart, because the heart knows. The heart is the compass of truth. It is here to guide us to our North Star, if you will. And when we're embodied in that, we become a beacon of light. We become a way shower, and then we become the leader. First, we have to lead ourselves. We have to lead ourselves into the light of truth, into soul alignment, and then we step into perhaps a greater level of leadership of the community, of clients, of a business, of perhaps even a greater, empire or service in the sphere of governance. I don't even want to use the word politics, right? Some of us are here to really help build an entire new system of reality. And so there are those of us who incarnated to create much, much different systems at a very large capacity, but it starts with being able to lead yourself. So one question for inquiry to help you, because remember, discernment is an embodied practice. It's something that you cultivate over time by anchoring into your body, by regulating your nervous system and anchoring into your heart of truth. So you have to actually be able to slow down enough to feel the difference and not be in a space of reactivity, but actually in a space of response, being able to respond. That response ability to respond, coming to the fore as a leader, right? So real truth is felt in the nervous system. Does it bring you peace, power, clarity? Then you know it's probably rooted in deeper truth. I just saw 111. So also, does this expand or constrict me? So a lot of the narratives are rooted in control. They're going to constrict. So if you feel into a narrative like the COVID agenda, is that truth or is that agenda? Is that control? Am I trying to be right or am I seeking to be true? So again, we get to be really clear and honest with ourselves if we're in a back and forth. Are we simply defending ourselves for the sake of being right and having the last word, or because there is a sacred truth that is wanting to be anchored through you to put that deeper truth out into the field? You might not always get that right, and that's okay. But allow yourself to be in a space of inquiry around that when you respond to someone. Is it because you're defending yourself from the space of needing to be right, or because you're here to anchor in a deeper truth? And you get to constantly be in that questioning, okay? So what the world needs right now, more than anything, more than ever, is soul-aligned discernment. More than ever. We need this grounded, anchored, embodied sacred truth coming to the fore, this discernment coming to the fore as a vessel of light, of love, of higher truth. When we're rooted in our hearts, we're connected to source. We're connected to that higher consciousness. We're connected to our higher self. And our higher selves do not operate in ego distortion. So I will also be hosting for the summer solstice an emerald, inner divine union, emerald grail leadership activation is the energy coming through. And this is very much about healing mother and father wounds to integrate and come into wholeness and to really allow that inner child to come to the fore, because that frequency of joy is our space of purity. Actually, purity is where our power is, and that resides within our hearts. So inner child healing, inner child activation, allowing that inner child to come back to life, this is part of the energy that has been coming through for the solstice. And I'm really excited to lead the activation and transmission. What has been coming through, the visuals that came through last night were really so beautiful, so nourishing, but also just really potent. And yeah, I don't want to spoil it because the visuals that come through for these are just really beautiful and magical. And I'm really excited to share this one. So if that resonates, I'll have the details down below. There is a replay, and you get lifetime access to the replay. If you can't join live, it'll be Sunday, June 26th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So if you can't make it live, there is the replay. It's very accessible, and I'll be sharing a whole transmission to anchor into the energetics more deeply as well. But this is also timeless. We live in the quantum, and it carries forward. So anytime you come upon this, if it's after June 22nd, the replay will be available. So you can always access that. And of course, I also have my one-on-one sessions, my free masterclass, but the one-on-ones, they've just been so powerful lately. A lot of womb healing, so the crystalline womb technology coming through. And I do soul blueprint activations as well, as, getting to the root of karmic blockages. So these are deep sessions. We use multi-dimensional source frequencies. And if you have questions, just email me and I can explain a little bit more. I'm creating that webpage, and it's not complete yet, but yeah, so if any of that resonates, it would be my honor to serve you. So thank you for being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. I would love to hear how this resonates and, what you've been experiencing in the energetics lately, because it's a lot. It's really a lot. And I just have a lot of compassion. Just want to, I'm curious what you're noticing in the field right now. I don't want to get into all the nuances, but I have been feeling it a lot. And yeah, so anyway, if you're resonating, if you feel called to walk this path of truth, clarity, discernment, alignment, stay tuned. There is so much more to come, so many more video ideas. I have a whole list already and a whole backlog of but yeah, I've had some requests, so stay tuned, onward and upward in love and light, and I will see you soon.